2777. Big Lou will answer your call and work to fit you into a term life policy that you can afford. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He's on meds too. Call 800-230-2777, 800-230-2777, or biglou.com.
If you have something to buy, sell, or trade, call me. Weekday mornings at 7:50 for Swap and Shop.
WGNS, AM, FM, and online. We're the Good Neighbor Network. FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro. FM 100.5 Smyrna. Audio and video streaming at WGNSradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Good morning. This is Bill Krause on the Thursday morning WGNS Roundtable, and we are very, very pleased and most fortunate to have two gentlemen with us this morning. One reflecting the city government, city of Murfreesboro, and one reflecting the state government, state of Tennessee. We're most pleased to have State Representative Brian Terry. Hello, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
And Murfreesboro City Councilman Kurt Wade. And good morning, Kurt.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I know Kurt's been on with us a couple of times before, but Brian, give us a little bit of background of who Brian Terry is and born where and how you've made the journey to here this morning.
Is this working? Can you hear
Yep,
me? Okay,
you're
good.
fine.
Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it. I came to Murfreesboro by way of Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma City and grew up third generation auto salvage. My parents and grandparents owned auto salvage when I was 13. My first job was working down there pulling parts off of cars. When I turned 16, drove the delivery truck, and so that was before GPS and all this.
Yes,
and so
yes.
I learned the streets of Oklahoma City like the back of my hand. We had I guess the mid 70s, my parents got involved with horses and bought a horse, and then eventually bought a farm, and we had a horse farm there. And then I am Native American. I'm Choctaw, so a tribal member, and went
right
to
near the Cherokees, huh?
Yeah. And then I went to the University of Oklahoma for undergrad, went to Oklahoma College of Medicine for med school. I was there. I was actually an intern in 1995 when the Oklahoma City bombing occurred.
Yes,
I was working.
Building.
Yeah, I was working with Dr. Kaysen at the time. He was actually a trauma surgeon. They didn't really have a trauma system set up in Oklahoma City at the time, but we were actually working there, and I was assisting on a gallbladder surgery when that occurred, and we shut down all the OR, went down, did triage down in the ER. Two of my high school classmates passed away in the blast, but I eventually decided to go into anesthesia and interviewed out in UT Knoxville. And
Is that your first choice?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Apparently I was in their top 6 too, because they had we do in medicine, you do what's called a match, where you pick your order rank where you've interviewed, and then they rank people that they've interviewed. And so apparently they were my number one choice, and I was in their top 6, and so I matched out there. So I was there during the Peyton Manning years.
Oh, wow.
And so that was good. And when we were finishing up residency, I was the president of the Tennessee Society of Anesthesiologists resident component, and this is really kind of before the internet was, job search on the internet.
Right.
But I was able to network through all that, and while I was there, I had multiple job offers, but we were kind of looking at a college town or a smaller town or something near a big city, but not necessarily a big city, kind of like Norman, Oklahoma. I tell people Norman, Oklahoma, where the University of Oklahoma is. Norman is to Oklahoma City what Murfreesboro is to Nashville. And I went to Moore High School, and Moore is essentially the Smyrna of Oklahoma. So if that gives you some
But
background where I'm
isn't
from.
that Tornado Alley?
It is, and to that point, I tell people Moore is known for tornadoes and Toby Keith. Toby Keith went to my high school. He was there, I think, 6 years before me. He was with my cousin. Our farm, it was May 20th, 2013. Our farm got a direct hit by an F5 tornado. Ooh. We lost 37 horses, potbelly pig. Everything was destroyed. My mom was actually out there feeding horses when she started getting sprinkled. She didn't have a smartphone, didn't know, but normally she would have pulled into one of the barns. My parents never built on the farm. They lived about 5 miles north in Oklahoma City. But grace of God moment, she decided to drive on back home, and the tornado sirens went off, and she was at home when the tornado hit. And we, the LA Times actually did a story on the farm and on her. They did a story about the horses and the animals that got hurt in the tornado. And like I said, we had 37 horses, but we removed 45. Wow. That, there were horses from all over. But anyway, that's. I ended up, Mark Hardison is a oral surgeon here in town, and he, to do his residency for oral surgery, they have to do 6 months of anesthesia. And he said, they're opening up a surgery center in Murfreesboro. We'd love to have you. And so he gave me the tip, and I, came out, interviewed, loved the place, and
here you are.
Here I am.
And Kurt, even though you have shared before, it's been a while, and love to hear the story, especially about one part about your bachelor's degree.
Oh, you know a little bit something about that, don't you?
I was your teacher.
See?
Didn't 30-some years ago.
30-some years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So
you were born in West Tennessee, if I recall?
Born in West Tennessee, Trenton, Tennessee. Grew up in Trenton, Tennessee. Went to college at Lane College. And before I could graduate from Lane College, they didn't have the classes I wanted to offer and for me to graduate. So one of this pharmacies that I knew, he just said, hey, they've got this school that you can do online courses. It's California Southern University, and that's actually how I met this young man.
32 years
32 years ago.
Can you believe?
Yeah. And
it was interesting how, because Kurt's son was a student of mine at Motlow. Brilliant, wonderful student.
Yeah, and so
and I asked Kurt, Kurt's son, would his dad like to be on the air? And so I Googled and I saw, gee, that's cool. I went back in my archives of files and saw his grades. He did well. He did great.
Yeah. So it's a small world, but it just also shows you how connected that we all are. And you just never know. You're going to meet some good people along the way, and Bill's been a good person. And getting to know Bill over the last couple of years has been extremely important to me and to our friendship. But most of all, I've been in Murfreesboro over 13 years now, and the blessing of being in Murfreesboro is being able to be here with the change and being a part of the change. And being a part of this change has been great for our community. Like I tell people say, you're growing too fast. We're trying to control the growth, but we're not growing too fast. But we have opportunities. And that's how we have to look at those as opportunities. Because if you look at some of these cities, they're not growing at all. So we have to think of it as opportunities and look at what we can do for the best of Murfreesboro. I tell everyone when I vote on what's best for Murfreesboro. I'm looking at the long-term picture. I'm sure Brian does too. If he's doing something for the state, he's looking what's going to benefit our state for the long term. Not only for the long term, for our kids. Because the bottom line is we're setting a precedent right now for our kids. We want our kids to, as I say, we want our kids to live here, play here, and work here. Those are the three things that we want our kids to do.
And not have to commute on I-24?
Not have to commute to I-24. And, eventually, Eventually, I think we're going to get mass transportation. I don't know when that is, Brian, but we're going to get it. Thank you, Brian, for answering that. I appreciate that. But eventually, we're going to get it, and it takes time. And I think we're all used to jumping in vehicles and going to our destination. And what we have to realize, there's so many vehicles on the road now. We've got to be able to take some of those vehicles off the road. But I think Murfreesboro has positioned itself in a good position for the last 8 to 10 years. We made some good critical choices that we've had to do to make sure our city is stable, making sure that we're keeping our police force, fire force intact. We've had to pay them more. It's not that we didn't want to pay them more, but we want to make sure that they can live here, work here, and play here as well. But I thought about this as we were sitting here talking, and I think Brian would attest to the same thing. I'd be remiss today not to say my condolences as well as Brian's condolences to Pastor Alan Jackson with the passing of his mother. And I just wanted to make sure that we got that out, that our prayers and our condolences with Pastor Alan Jackson at World Outreach Church.
Now, this is what's so neat. We've got a representative from both the city and the state, and they work together. What 3 areas for both the city and the state of Tennessee, from your perspective, would you say are the most pressing or the most impactful today in July 2024, both from the state standpoint and the city standpoint? Brian?
Oh, wow. Thank you for that question. Appreciate that. Yeah, actually, I've actually gone out, talking to folks here locally, knocking on doors, and the biggest issue that I hear from folks is the economy right now. That's a big issue that they're having. Obviously, in my district, there's always concerns and questions about growth. About growth and about the landfill. So those are probably the 3 of the big ones. I've had people talk about immigration or legal immigration has been an issue, but really I'd say growth, taxes, and the landfill is always a big issue in my district.
Would you say, for both of you, safety right now, especially with the events of last Saturday, play a big role?
Absolutely, and that's something that has been brought up to me at the doors as well, was safety. And I will say that, at the Capitol, there's, over the past several years, there's been a lot more presence from the troopers up there. When we're in committee, depending on what type of bill is up and what type of crowds are there that day, there may be more troopers in there. Our sergeant at arms, they're always available. Sometimes they put a couple of them in there. And then when I'm a chairman of health up there, and we have our chairman's meeting, and they'll go through, process of, if disruption goes on, how to gavel and gavel out and go into a recess, and then make sure everybody's, safe. And, knock on wood, I haven't had too many major disruptions in my committee.
Good. And how about Murfreesboro and events realizing that election is coming up in a very short, in fact, early voting is on right now.
Early voting just started.
August 1st. But major challenges and issues of Murfreesboro.
I think as Brian say, as campaigning out there on the trail right now, knocking on doors, I think one of the most things I hear is growth in infrastructure. And when you start talking about growth, just like we were talking about infrastructure, that's where the traffic and stuff comes in. And I think, working with our counterparts here with the state, making sure that we're getting the federal funds, the state funds that are needed to get our roads expanded and quick as possible. I think they've done a good job. But I also think when you start talking about growth in infrastructure, you start talking about education. You start talking about are we going to have to build another school pretty soon? At one time, it seemed like every other year we were building a school around here. We hadn't built one in the last 4 years, so we might be in the process of building another one pretty soon, and which pretty soon is within the next year or so.
Sooner than later.
Sooner than later.
Uh-huh.
And then the other issue is emergency services, making sure we're taking care of our police force, our firefighters, and they're getting the tools that they need, and not only the tools that they need, but the pay as well. So those are the three important things that we're hearing from the community, and those are three issues that I've had talked about on my campaign. And that's when you see a flyer, those three issues that I will have on, they're on my flyer.
Great. I have with us also my grandson, Zach Thomas. Hello, Zach.
Good morning.
And talk to Zach, both of you. How do we get young people today not only accepting the world of politics, or at least voting in the world of politics, but acknowledging the phenomenal opportunities we have serving our communities? Both of you gentlemen serve your communities, and you give a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of calls and people and what have you. How do we get people motivated? This last week certainly has been a wake-up call, like so many wake-up calls, about who we are and what should we be doing. How do we talk to the Zachs of the world and say, it's a great future out there, we go through bumps, we go through more than bumps, but how do we handle the future?
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, we got a little debate here.
No. So I'll tell you my story, and then I can relate to your grandson. So what I've said all along is, my dad was a city councilman in West Tennessee for 20 years. Mm-hmm. I got to see him at work for 20 years, but I also got to see, okay, do I really want to do this? I never thought I would do this. And then all of a sudden, I got hit with the bug. When I moved to Murfreesboro, I met Mayor Tommy Braggs, and he put me on Planning Commission, and that spearheaded my opportunity to serve. And I think one of the things I've said in the past is, we got to start this thing early in life with these kids. We got to talk about it in junior high. We got to talk about it in high school. And we got to let them know how important, first of all, it is to vote. You have a right to vote. But when you're voting, you're exercising your right about a particular issue or something. You're making a statement. That's your voice. If we don't explain that to them when they're in junior high school, they're gonna fall by the wayside once they get to college. Once they get to college, if they have no ambition to think about politics or even thinking about what's going on in their community, get involved, sit on boards. And what I've told people all the time, before you run for an office, go and sit on somebody's board, 2 or 3 boards, to get involved, to understand what goes on with government, how government works, and how you can play a crucial part. And I think as we continue to preach that message, not only preach that message, but we have to instill that not only in our kids, we have to instill that in some of our adults as well. Understand what's going on in the government, get involved, even getting involved with the school boards, different opportunities to get involved. Take advantage of it, and you'll see it's not only a pleasure to serve, but also have an opportunity to give back and make a difference in your community.
Perfect. And Brian?
Thank you. And it's this issue. Can you look at the big picture and the I guess you'd say macroeconomic type view, and the individual. So the big picture and the individual, getting big groups and then your generation to get involved is a challenge. It's a challenge for a lot of folks. Most people want to be left alone, want to leave other people alone, and they're not all that involved. One-on-one, small groups, it's easier to get people involved that way. Going back to, and I don't know if we're going to get to this some point in time, but
sure. It's your call.
But for me, getting involved was really to help my children and their generation. I had felt like people often ask, how did you get involved? What they say is, what's your get off the couch moment? And for me, it's the 2012 presidential election. I'd always been politically attentive, not necessarily politically active, and I'm not going to really go into that. But that night, I felt like both candidates really weren't being the voice for the next generation. I actually was on call. Was working a 24-hour shift at the hospital, and luckily I was able to go home. Got home, and I went up and apologized to my son and said, my generation has failed your generation. I'm going to see how I can get involved and try to figure out how I could help get more young folks involved as well. And so some of the things that I have done over the years, and it's something I've actively tried to do, I worked with Central Magnet students. They have a class, Contemporary Issues. Get them involved in politics, or at least get them involved in the process. We had a bill. One of the first bills that I co-sponsored was for them. I worked with them, had them look at different issues out there. They voted on which issue they wanted that was important to them, and I worked to get that passed. It was the Right to Try Act to help patients get into trials for drugs, and we passed that here in Tennessee, and eventually it passed at the federal level, and Trump signed that bill nationwide, and that's something that we got worked here in the state. My first intern, Leonard, I always take an intern, try to always take an intern or two, now that I'm chairman, to get them involved. And he was an MTSU student, and one of the issues he was asked me about was the Racial Profiling Prevention Act. And so I took that on and co-sponsored that, and we were able to get that passed. There's the Tennessee Intercollegiate State Legislature. They were removed, this back during the Haslam administration, they had the right to vote on their boards. And during that administration, they removed the right for the students to vote. They could be present. They were kind of like Puerto Rico. You're present up there, you just can't vote.
Yeah.
And they sent out an email to all legislators, senators, state representatives, and there was one person that responded.
Wow.
And that was me. And I took that on, and Kara actually, she was an incredible lobbyist for them at the time, and ultimately she's going to be a physician. She just finished med school. Ended up writing her a letter of recommendation, and she's going to be a pediatrician, so I'm very proud of her. But it's getting those type of involvements. There was this last session, there were some students from Central that came up, and they had a bill. They were actually presenting it in the Senate, and it was late at night, and I just happened to be walking through the Capitol, and through the Cordell Hall, and I see some students there, and I just kind of asked where they were from, and they said, "Oh, we're from Central," and I had a conversation with them, and encouraged them what they're doing. And this past week, they reached out to me, and they're trying to set something up to figure out how they can be better advocates, and so I'm out reaching out for them. And so these are things that I try to do to help us, or help our next generation get more involved. I had some middle school students from Central wrote letters, and I went back, looked through, read all the letters, and then took a picture and sent it to their teacher to encourage them to get involved. And so I've tried to do the little things to do that. It's harder on a bigger picture to get people involved, but I know they talk about you're walking along the beach and there's tons of starfish out there and on the beach, and you can take one and you can throw it in there, and they're like, well, what good's that going to do? And it's like, well, I may not be able to help all of them, but I've helped that one. And so the little things that you can do as elected officials or even as adults to get the youth involved, or to me, is a positive thing.
And you never know when somebody or some event or some activity will influence or impact. I don't know, Kurt, if I ever told you this, that in the final exam in an American government class, which your son was in, one of the questions that they had to choose from on the final, what political person has impressed you the most and inspired you into the study of politics? You know who that was? Your father, his grandfather.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh,
and
wow.
he spent, I wish I had a copy. He spent 2 pages talking about how his grandfather was as a councilman mayor. He was also mayor in a small town in western Tennessee, had a great influence on him. And you may never realize that in a quiet way or an active way, who can impact. Zach, what influences you, or how are you influenced?
Well, I'm influenced by a lot. I hear what my mom has to say. I hear what you have to say. I see what they post on social media.
And we don't always agree, his mother and me.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think it goes to show that, especially my generation and the younger crowd are and can be afraid to voice their opinions for risk of being ridiculed or canceled. I guess my question would be, how would you go about starting that dialogue and getting out in the community for these younger generations?
I can tell you, I spoke at MTSU at their business class. So to make them feel comfortable, what I did is, tell me what you like about Murfreesboro. Tell me what we can do to make sure Murfreesboro appeases to you and your friends and make you want to not only go to school here, but after you finish school, live here, live, work, and play. That's what I did. And I said, and most of them said, one of the things, we're college town. We don't have an entertainment district. That's what we're trying to do on Broad Street. We're trying to create something to keep people here, kids of your age, adults of your
He's still a kid to me.
young adults of your age, and we're trying to appeal to everyone. But we have to say, what do you like? What would make you want to stay here in Murfreesboro? If you go and look at any college town, they've got things that appeal to the college student as well as the adults that live in that city. I don't think we've gotten there yet with the appeal to the young adults. We have to, if you think about, look out on Medical Center Parkway. Those apartments out there, those houses and things that are coming out there, that's appealing to young adults. Because you know what they want to do? They want to go home. They want to leave work, walk to work. They want to be able to walk back home. After work, they want to walk to the restaurant, go back home. That's what's appealing to them. We're trying to make sure that we're doing things that appeal to the young people, but we have to seek and ask. Seek and ask, what's your advice? What are you looking for? How can we help you? And I think all our council, we continue to speak in our community. That's what we do. We try to ask, what would you like in our city?
And to that point, talking about seek and ask, I would throw that back on the youth. Don't be afraid to seek and ask. And I'm at the hospital or at the surgery center. I have being a physician, I have people that will job shadow me around there, and I tell them there's no bad question. Just ask, and I'll give you the answers I can give you. But I think a lot of people may be intimidated by elected officials or even adults or teachers. They're afraid to go, that they may be embarrassed by asking a question, and that's we were all teenagers at once. Everybody's
Right.
you're self-conscious, and you don't want to you're concerned that somebody may make fun of you or something like that. But adults and elected officials, that's part of our job. Talk to folks, and so having the youth talk to you. I've there was a I'm actually she doesn't agree with me politically at all, but there's a student that was at Vanderbilt, and during some of our special sessions, she came up there, and her parents, I think they were a year ahead of me or a year behind me in medical school. She's a student at Vanderbilt, and a lot of people won't talk to somebody that's an activist on the other side. And she came in and sat down. We talked for about an hour in my office, and then she's not going to necessarily agree with me politically, but she remembered what I said, and
for you too.
And she said, I've tried to go back and empathize with both sides, because you can't move forward if you can't see the other person's point of view. And so I would tell the youth, that actually coming and talking to us actually helps us as elected officials, because now we get to hear another point of view that's not just something in my generation. And so, you're helping us. Think of it that way. And so that's how you can get involved.
The two of you both represent very, very diverse constituencies. You were saying before, Brian, before you went on the air, that Your district is from very wealthy areas in Murfreesboro to the farmlands and east of the community and so forth, and all ages, all economic levels and so forth. The same as the city of Murfreesboro, Kurt, that it's a very diverse community. How do you establish a position or a philosophy or an application where you have to appeal to a huge, wide variety of people's tastes, people's beliefs, people's philosophies?
That great question. And so I think, like my district, I'm eastern half of Rutherford County, and so I have some of inner city Murfreesboro. I have MTSU. I have some of the like Mirabella, some of the Northwood, some of the bigger neighborhoods, and then I have the rural areas like Milton and Las Casas and Christiana, and so Kittrell, and those areas are all, like I said, diverse in thought. My background, being Native American, having a farm growing up, being third generation auto salvage, now being a physician, I'm an affiliated associate professor of UT graduate medical education, teaching students that way. So I have a pretty unique background in order to be able to connect with those type of diverse type of individual thought. I think a lot of it is going out and talking to folks. Having knocked on thousands upon thousands of doors, you never know what you're going to get. Coming at the doors, but going to events,
Including dogs. Have you
yeah,
had dogs?
had dogs.
Plenty of dogs.
Plenty of dogs.
Yeah.
But I think that's one way that you're able to connect. Being an anesthesiologist, it's I guess it's in my blood. It's ironically, I'm an introvert. You might think elected officials are not, but I am, and that's part of how I ended up in Tennessee, is because being an anesthesiologist, you have to go up to meet somebody, and within 5 minutes, they're putting their life in your hands.
Yes.
And so for me, going out knocking doors and talking to folks, within 5 minutes, they're putting their vote or their livelihood or their issue in my hands. And so it's just something that, for me, I've done 30 some odd years that going to patients doing that, and so having the background that I've had, plus how I work as a physician, has kind of given me an ability to interact with folks.
Well, before we go on, Kurt, one sub question to that. All your life you've been trained to diagnose, so I imagine your diagnostic skills with the patient will apply to a diagnostic skill with the issue.
So great. I'm glad you actually brought that up. I do something at the Capitol for my committee, and a lot of other chairmen have started to copy me on this, and I call it my process. And so I have like what I call principles, process, and passion. And the process, it's really kind of a business process, but it's something medical. What is the problem or the premise that you're looking to address? And so for as an anesthesiologist, it's like the surgeon says, I've got to take this patient to surgery. The first thing you do is reject the premise. You have to prove the premise right. And so, then the second is, what is your goal? What's the goal that so for me as an anesthesiologist, well, I want them to have a good experience. I want them to be as safe as possible. I want them not to have pain afterwards, not to have nausea afterwards. What are my options? We can do a general anesthetic. Maybe we can just sedate you. Maybe we can do a nerve block. Maybe we can do an epidural. Then what's the feasibility? If you're doing working on somebody's throat or neck or something like that, you really can't do a spinal because it doesn't get it numb up there. So that's not feasible. And then last is, what are the consequences of those options, including inaction? So that's a process that I've done for forever, taking care of patients and work through that. And then you apply that to business, or you can apply that to a bill or any sort of issue. And to me, that's helped me work through. And I have everyone that puts a bill in my committee, you have to fill out my process sheet. And then if you're not, guess what? You're going to have questions asked to you in front of the committee. And I think you'd rather have give me those answers beforehand.
Yeah.
So
We'll be right back, and Kurt, you'll have a chance
All
at
right.
that too. We're having a wonderful visit this morning on WGNS Roundtable with State Representative Brian Terry and Murfreesboro City Councilman Kurt Wade. We'll be right back.
At Middle Point, we want to be part of the solution. That's why we're making significant investments in proactively enhancing our facilities to integrate sustainable solutions.
Mike Klassen with Middle Point Landfill.
We invite you to learn more about us at middlepointlandfill.com.
Middle Point Landfill is an environmentally safe, economical, and reliable solution for solid waste for Rutherford County.
For public services, we are sustainability in action.
Since 1903, French's Shoes and Boots has been your hometown store for boots, shoes, apparel, and more. We always have the latest styles from all of your favorite brands. Plus, we have racks loaded with unbelievable bargains, up to 90% off. If you find a lower price, we'll match it, because nobody beats French's everyday low prices.
It makes good sense to shop at French's. French's Shoes and Boots.
1837 South Church Street in Murfreesboro.
You know the value of a good neighbor, someone you can trust, someone who looks out for you. And when it comes to Medicare, it's good to have someone on your side. That's where Senior Financial Group comes in. We're Tennesseans, just like you, and we've partnered with United Healthcare, a trusted name in health insurance. Together, we'll guide you through your Medicare options. We will compare plans, answer your questions, and ensure you get the most of your Medicare benefits with United Healthcare. Don't navigate Medicare alone. Call Senior Financial Group at 800-690-0251 or visit sfgmedicare.com for a free plan review today.
All right, guys, load them up.
The day starts early.
I loaded the sweet corn, the potatoes.
Dad got the fresh cut bacon on there.
Farmers throughout Middle Tennessee prepare their load of what they're bringing to the farmers market.
You know, our farm's a century farm. Been in our family for over 100 years.
The Rutherford County Farmers Market, a producer-only farmers market at the Lane Agri-Park in Murfreesboro.
Thank you for what you do.
We couldn't do it without you.
The Rutherford County Farmers Market open Tuesday and Friday until the end of October, 7 to noon at the Lane Agri-Park on John R. Rice Boulevard.
It's summertime and it's time to do more outdoors. But do you feel out of energy, lacking motivation and mental focus? It could be low testosterone. Low T affects millions of men and it happens naturally. The solution? Testosterone replacement therapy at Low T Center. I literally walk in, they check the level, and then I find out where I stand today. Right now at Low T Center, they are offering a free initial test. If you're over 30, schedule that visit at lowtcenter.com today.
Offer till July 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Good Neighbor Events with Bart Walker. Brought to you by the law offices of John Day and AmeriCare Pest Control.
I've got pests.
It's time to mount a counterattack on mosquitoes and reclaim your yard. AmeriCare Pest Control can help you enjoy your yard again and protect your family from mosquitoes that can carry West Nile and encephalitis. Call 893-7111 to learn more about their mosquito control services.
AmeriCare Services Incorporated. Licensed, insured, and bonded for your protection.
Call the best of the best to get rid of your pest.
893-7111.
Let's check those WGNS Good Neighbor events. Have you voted yet? Early voting is going on right now through July the 27th. So get out and vote. Oh, the Rutherford County Library System is offering free computer classes. They're over at the Tech Center, you know, the Technology Engagement Center at 306 Minerva Drive. These free computer classes are Monday afternoons at 3:30 and Tuesdays at 2:30. And again, that's at the Tech Center on Minerva Drive. Put this on your calendar. The tax-free weekend is coming up July the 26th through the 28th. Save on your back-to-school items here in Tennessee. The tax-free weekend, July the 26th through the 28th. Now listen, there are 2 free grief support groups in our community. One is every Wednesday morning at 10 at the St. Clair Street Senior Center. The other is a walking grief support group, and the walk begins in the picnic pavilion at Oakland's Park, right next to Oakland's Mansion, the next day, Thursdays, at 9:30 in the morning. And they're both free. Those are WGNS Good Neighbor events.
WGNS powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. Looking to go solar? MTE's Pro Solar program is committed to educating members on the process and helping them achieve their renewable energy goals. Learn more about Pro Solar and your free consultation at mte.com/prosolar.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
This is Bill Krause once again on the WGNS Roundtable for a thrilling, titillating Thursday morning. And we were just heard from Brian in terms of how you coordinate, communicate, etc. Kurt, do you want to take a stab at that answer?
Yeah, sure. I think when you start talking about diversity, and this is how Murfreesboro has grown, we created something here that's a little different. We've got a lot of people from all backgrounds that live here in Murfreesboro now. And so what I've tried to do is just take a little bit of everything, communicating with people and getting to understand. And what I do is bring it back to council, say, hey, when we start thinking about something, it's got to be for all segment of people. We've got to start thinking about how our city is growing, how diverse we are now, and it has to play a role in everything that we think about and how we do. Because bottom line is this, and I've said it all along, we all have to live here. We all have to work here. We all have to play here. But when we can't get along, we create a division. That's not what we want to hear in Murfreesboro. We all want to be able to, regardless of what Brian's affiliation, regardless of what my affiliation, we should be able to sit here at the table and talk and say, what's best for Murfreesboro? What's best for the state? And we should be able to come to agreement to say, this is what we've come up with. This is what's best for Murfreesboro. This is what's best for the state. And those are the things that I've tried to do while sitting on the council. You know, I can tell you a couple of years ago when the NAACP came to me and they said, hey, we want a Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. And I said, well, let me take it back to the council. And how I approached the council was this. There is a Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard in every major city. And there's one in most major cities in Tennessee. Why wouldn't we want to have one? For what he did, what he stood for, and the council was very receptive to that. It was a 7-0 vote, and we did that within, they thought it would take 2 years to get this Mercury Boulevard changed to Dr. Martin Luther King. We did it in 6 months. That was a truly impact, making a difference. But that's just one segment of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that everybody, first of all, feel included, because that's the key. You can move here, but if you don't feel a part of the community, because I think we still have that small town feel, and we have that community connect. That's why people continue to move here, and we want to make everybody feel welcome when they move to Murfreesboro.
It's a slogan. It's a small town with many people in it.
There you go. That's what it is.
One of the things that first thing I teach in American government, first thing, or any time in a political discussion, you must start out by saying, in my opinion, this is how I see it. If you just put the words, in my opinion, no longer is I deal with facts, and anybody
right.
disagrees with me, you don't know the facts. You start out, in my opinion, or as I see it, you will go a long way. One of the areas of talking to two wonderful elected officials, you know, there is personal achievement, there's personal satisfaction, but you also deal with, quote, things that can hurt. I think the one area that you never read about or hear about, and I know, Brian, you've been in the state for over 10 years, and Kurt, you've been on for
8
going
years.
into your, readying for your third term. When you decide to run for election, and you have small children at home, and I'm defining small child by one who's still in elementary school, perhaps first, second, and third grade, and you unfortunately hit a nasty, nasty, nasty campaign, and that campaign starts taking personal attacks at you and who you are and what have you. How do you deal? You may be able to deal relatively easily with your wife. She understands. But how do you deal with a small child who's on the playground in school and other children are talking about what their dad is like? I think that would be, I hope that doesn't discourage people going into the political process, but how do you deal with it?
You want to tackle it? Or?
I mean, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you that, I guess going back to my first election, there was some negative stuff that went out there, and I don't know that any of that really got. My son was I guess he was in high school at the time, and my daughter, she was really little at the time, so she wouldn't have really known. From a family perspective, my wife, I think that made her more encouraging, I guess you could say. She was always supportive of me running, but it was she became even more supportive at that time, because she know that there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. There's at the Capitol, we have what's called LIS, Legislative Information Systems, that they handle the emails, and if it's ever shut down, we do get threats. We do get some nasty emails that way. So some of that you want to protect your children from. It's difficult from that aspect. I couldn't imagine having really nasty stuff said about me, or at least and inappropriate stuff that goes on at some of the higher level offices that your family knows who you are, and they know it's some of that stuff's not true, but I would think that it would take a toll on some of those families,
including parents. If you're a parent and your child is an elected official, and you start seeing them treated like they're the devil from deep below, at what point do you just totally say, no, enough? Kurt?
Yeah, I grew up in this, and so I'm kind of used to it. I'm kind of knowing what to expect. What I've learned is this: in the past century, is politics has gotten a lot dirtier. It's gotten a lot evil. It's gotten a lot cruel. People will say anything just to get a point across. And I think you have to talk to your family, and you also have to talk to your children to let them know there's going to be some stuff put out there that's not going to be very satisfactory towards your dad or mom, or whoever it may be, but you have to deal with it. But I think one of the things I could say is, being in this city council for the last 8 years, the pleasure of being on this council, we're a nonpartisan race, and I like it like that. And then the reason being is this: there's nothing that I have to vote on this local level it's Democrat or Republican or independent. It doesn't really matter. We vote on things that are strictly local issues, and I like it like that, because when I go vote, and when I think everybody else go vote right now, they're thinking, what's best for Murfreesboro? Brian doesn't have that option of thinking like that, but for us, we do. And I think it keeps us thinking about one thing only, what's best for Murfreesboro, and it keeps all of us trying to be on one accord, not saying, well, I'm going to be voting down this party line or this party line. I think that's what makes our council and our mayor so special, is that's how the city of Murfreesboro has been governed the last couple of years.
Zach?
Looking at these decisions that you both have to make in your respective positions, for those that I guess are not informed or don't know, what do these processes look like for making these decisions to benefit not just the good of the majority, but the good of the whole?
So,
Good
I kind of went over my process that I look at issues. I'll go back to principles, and I call it the three rights. And not everybody thinks this way, but it's kind of like it's a Venn diagram. What is right for the community, or what is right for my district, or what is right for the state? What is our right? What's constitutional? what's legal. And then the last part of it is, what do I think is right? And I will tell you that I probably have a lot of internal conflict, probably more so than a lot of elected officials, because I do that, and I like, well, you know, this just because something's constitutional doesn't mean it's right. You know,
Right.
just because the majority may want to take your bicycle away from you doesn't mean that that's right. And just because I have an idea and I think that may be the right thing to do, you know, there's a legal process to go through, and if I think it's right but the community may not think it's right, then I either have to sell it to the community and get it through, like Kurt was saying on the sign. You know, is it the right thing to do? And you know, if you have to make sure that the community and everybody comes together on that. And so that's kind of how I do look at bills and look at that process. Going through the legislative, that's a whole nother hour to explain how that goes, but that's kind of how I do things. And I say, if I can, you know, get the process or my principles right, go through the process and see that it's the right option to take, then I can carry that bill with a passion, or I can vote for it with a passion. And that's kind of how I do things.
We'll be right back. We'll take a quick final break before. And Kurt, do you have a chance at this?
All right, I got you.
There's probably a brick mailbox made by LaGreen's Masonry near you. Look at the brick mailboxes on their website, lagreensmasonry.com. Family owned and operated, LaGreen's Masonry is A+ rated by the BBB.
This is Stan Vaught. I'm a lot like you, a husband, father, farmer, auctioneer, and community supporter. I'm now a candidate for school board. In the last cases, Walter Hill, Milton, Leanna, Oakland, and Siegel communities. I believe in community schools, vocational education, and getting education back to the basics. I'd appreciate your support for school board.
Early voting going on now through July 27th. Election day is August 1st. Paid for by Stan Vaught for school board, Stan Vaught treasurer.
Hi, this is Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb and Associates. You might know me as the voice of the Blue Raiders, but I want to be your trusted advisor in real estate. Whether you're buying or selling, it's time to choose Chip. Do you have a growing family and need to upsize? Are you an empty nester now and need to downsize? Are you thinking of selling your current home but just worried you can't find something else? Well, it's time to choose Chip. I'm looking to be your trusted advisor in real estate. I'm Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb and Associates.
Del Walmsley and the Wealth Cycle.
This is the wealth cycle that I've taught for 30 years. Buy one house, 10 houses, an apartment, 2 apartments, 8, 20, 500 units, 1,000 units, 2,000, 5,000 units. And as you keep putting the money and the profits back in, you become one of those rich people. And much quicker than you'd even believe.
Learn Del's Wealth Cycle at GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. Use promo code 2023. Save 60%. Code 2023. GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. GiveMeTotalFreedom.com.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Bill Krause for the third and final segment of the WGNS Roundtable. And Councilman Wade, you have the next response.
All right. I think, Zachary, I think one of the things that I talked about in the before is what I do when we're trying to make a decision. I vote on what's best for Murfreesboro, but I decide on, okay, how does it affect us long term? What's the long term game? How does it affect everybody in our community? I can give you a prime example. When you start talking about the Medical Center Parkway, there was nothing there when we first got there, but we branched it out because one of the things everybody complained about, well, we don't want to go to Franklin, we don't want to go to Brentwood to shop. So we start bringing things like that to that area. We start bringing housing to that. We start bringing foods to that area. Those are some of the things that people are asking for, and we're trying to bring them. So we have to look at the big picture first. What's good for Murfreesboro? What are our constituents asking for? And let's try to make it happen. And I think that's the process that I think about as when we're making decisions, because you really have to think about, is this beneficial? Is it the long term? it's not something that's going to be in and out in 5 to 10 years. Is it something that we want in Murfreesboro to be a staple of Murfreesboro, to continue to make Murfreesboro grow and a great place to live? So,
as we approach the conclusion of the program, I was struck earlier that, Brian, you've been a baseball coach, correct?
I coached Little League, yes.
Do you enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely. It was coaching and mentoring the youth. It's in my blood. I don't know how you get out of it.
So how do we motivate not just little folks hitting the ball, but motivate our society to place patriotism, place politics, place the love of who we are, place the love of our history and tradition? How do we get them as enthused as you will get the kids out to win that championship?
That's a great question, and patriotism and motivations. A lot of it comes down to morality, and a lot of it comes down to when you market to folks. A lot of times, one of the things that's some of the positive things you can market is hope. You can market pride. You can market patriotism, and it's marketing. There's a lot of different ways to market, but understanding that this is the greatest country on earth. Tennessee is America at its best, and Rutherford County is Tennessee at its best,
and the center of the world.
And it's right. The middle Tennessee. The monument is in my district, and
like Buc-ee's is,
and yeah, like Buc-ee's is going to be.
Yeah.
But I think that understanding you have a wealth of opportunity, not only in the city,
that's right,
in the county, in this state, and in America, and we need to keep it that way. And that's what makes America great. Is we're a melting pot, but there's a melting pot of opportunity for us too.
Kurt?
I think Brian hit it on the head, and I think the key point of what Brian just said was communicate. We don't know how to communicate anymore. We've forgotten how to communicate. How can I communicate? I might not agree with everything Brian does. He might not agree with everything I do, but we still know how to communicate to solve an issue, to get things done. And I think as we go back as a society and look at what's going on nationally, how can we make a difference in our communities where we can spread the good word out to others? Let's not focus on what's going on nationally. Let's focus on what's going on here in Murfreesboro. Let's focus on what's going on here in the state. Let's make our state, let's make Murfreesboro a better place. How we do that is I've got to have a line of communication. I got to say, Mr. Bill, hey, I've got some issues. This is what my issue is. You might come back to me and say, well, I don't like that issue. And I said, how can we work together to solve this issue? Mm-hmm. How many times do we actually sit down and have a communication and have a conversation that actually works for all parties without everybody saying, we're not doing this, we're not doing this? I think that's what our country has to come to realize. Just like Brian said, we're a melting pot. How do we get that melting pot to melt together? How can we relate to each other? I don't know your issues, you don't know my issues, but if we sit down and talk, we can come to a common agreement that we both got issues. Let's work together to make them better.
But I never admit I have issues. I have I have opportunities.
There you go.
You take it to the positive. You have opportunities
right.
to always work. As we conclude, I've got to say this, and I'm saying this not as an election promotion or a candidate favorability, because we are guided under certain restrictions of endorsements on the air, etc., I'm sure. However, I hope the folks out there at WGNS World listened this last hour, because these are two men that have already dedicated a number of years out of their professionalism, out of their personal lives, to serving the public. And I am extraordinarily impressed with State Representative Brian Terry, and I'm equally extraordinarily impressed with Murfreesboro City Councilman Kurt Wade. And this is what comprises the million elected officials in the United States today, from the national to the local. And when you take a look at the overwhelming men and women who are serving their community, their state, and their nation, you have to give them credit. You know, as we do with the military and as we do with public safety people, we thank them for their service. Whether you agree or disagree, next time you meet an elected official, thank them for their service. Whether you agree or disagree is secondary. We thank you two gentlemen for your service. May August 1st be a great day for you, and we look forward to seeing you come back on WGNS.
Thank you.